Oh, thank you. So it's only this. Yep. He said he'd come late.
Yeah, I'm not watching it.
Oh, that,
Is that what I'm supposed to do, Kathy? Mike?
no,
I'm not doing it from here then. Okay.
no, we just do it from up here.
Got it?
You're supposed to wait until it's over.
Did I do that?
We're going to call you Jimi Hendrix.
Don't touch the
Okay.
equipment.
Don't mess with it with the IT guys.
That's what he really wanted to say.
We call those ID10T problems. IDIOT. ID10T problems. That way you don't have to embarrass anybody and say, hey, ID10T problem over here.
We're close.
Okay.
Oh, it's on record.
All right.
Let me just make sure that they're okay with everybody.
That's us. Sorry.
Okay, on record.
All right, let's call to order the City of Lincoln City work session meeting of March 18th, 2019. It's 5:30. How about a roll call by voice?
Riley Hoagland.
Staff Lindsay Zamel.
Deanna Hinton.
Mitch Parsons.
Diane Cruz.
Ron Chandler.
Allison Robertson. Judy Casper.
Dick Anderson.
Kathy Seer, city reporter.
Richard Appicello, secretary.
Sheila Siley, Northwest Coastal Housing.
With the mouthful.
Bill Holwood.
Great. Thank you.
Mateo.
Oh, Mateo behind the post.
Say it.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Chandler.
Okay, so the purpose of tonight's meeting is really an extension of the priority meeting, especially as we are approaching budget, because your discussion has some huge budget implications. One of the priorities that you had established was expanding economic opportunities through housing. And I sent you a lot of material, 120 pages worth. We want more discussion than review. So most of that, especially the last three of the four documents, is really just for your review. But what we really want to do tonight is try to get a sense of the direction in which you're going as we're putting together budgets and other policy and other decisions and other city council meetings. So let me just do a little bit of review. And like I said, mostly what we want to do is to get the discussion from you to get a sense of where the city will go. Over the last 2 or 3 years, the city has had a policy pertaining to homelessness and workforce housing that we have pursued, both in our budget and in our practices. Now, in order to go into that, I need to do just a few definitions of some things. The professionals that, when they talk about housing, they talk about a housing continuum that begins with homelessness all the way to market ownership or market rental of a facility, home, apartment, whatever it may be. And everybody is in that continuum somewhere, okay? For the purposes of our discussion, I've broken it down into 4 groups because because it fits quite well with the policies and the practices we've had over the last 3 years. The first of those is homeless. Now, the county has defined homeless as, I won't go through all of this, but really in your packet, the first bullet point on page 3 is the most important. People who are living in a place not meant for human habitation, in emergency shelters, in transitional housing, or are exiting an institution where they temporarily resided. Okay? Again, I use that definition because it fits very well with the practices that we have had over the last 3 years. Shelters are generally short-stay facilities, 1 night to about 6 months, and they offer levels of support such as food, laundry, showers, They are emergency crisis facilities, including emergency weather shelters. The two that we know the best in the county are the warming shelter here in Lincoln City and Grace Winds Havens in Newport. Transitional housing is short to medium housing that provides supportive services, including case managers, to move people into self-sufficiencies. They begin to address the issues that led to homelessness and keep people in as homeless. Again, the three good examples that you would be familiar with are Family Promise here in town, the Samaritan House Family Shelter in Newport, and My Sister's Place. All of them provide housing plus services to help people strive to get out of that homeless category into the next one.
Ron, isn't it, we could add Helping Hands? We
Sure.
haven't, they aren't
You could add.
visible, but they
Yes, you could add Helping Hands into that group. I did not, this is not a comprehensive list, but yes, Helping Hands would be exactly that type of group. Now, permanent supported housing, permanent supportive or supportive housing are generally are occupied by those who experience multiple barriers to housing and are unable to maintain housing stability without supportive care. Now, as I studied up on this and talked with professionals on this, this can be subsidized housing, such as Section 8 housing, voucher housing. It can also be full market housing, such as assisted living centers, where they may be paid market rate, but there are services that are provided, or it can be supportive, like a senior center or assisted living center. The key is that it's a permanently supported type of housing. Now, we won't talk much about that because our policies have not really been in that area other than to support groups like the Ridge and so forth. Yes.
It would be good to know, how many of those we have in town, and how both on the senior side, the low or below average, and just to see how many units, what's the need, for those different ones, because I know some of them are age and income based, some of them are income based, and then some of them are only age based. So the differences between those three, and I know you're not trying to spend a lot of time, but that we have this much here in town, like just of that itself.
Okay. Okay. The other area which is very significant to us is what we have for the last little while called the workforce housing. Now, Allison and I are pushing that we change the name of that to the missing middle. That comes from two things. One is our own experience in that definition, and the other is a lot of people can be working, but in one of these other categories. So what we have defined as the missing middle is those people whose household income is between 60 to 120% of the median household income. Now, sometimes we use the cities, sometimes the counties use, depending upon the agencies that are working with them. In one of the documents that you have, the housing needs analysis, while it identifies the city's household median income, which is about $7,000 less than the county's, for the purpose of determining what is affordable housing. We have used the county's the county's workforce housing.
Ron, do we use the number of what is the average income of residents, or what is the average pay of workers,
It is the household income.
of residents in the city, not what the average pay is? I
Right.
suppose. All right.
From the economic opportunities analysis and housing needs analysis, the city established in 2017 the following objectives. This is from page 5 of your packet. One, to investigate ways to reduce fees on constructions of affordable and workforce housing while ensuring new infrastructure is not underfunded. Facilitate development of affordable housing on city-owned properties. Periodically review the development codes, regulations, and zoning map to ensure they encourage a variety of housing types, such as accessory dwelling units, tiny houses, big houses, and senior houses. All that should sound very familiar to you. Involve employers in efforts to provide and support workforce housing. Enact strategies to ensure that sufficient, appropriately zoned land is available within the city and outside the tsunami inundation zone, such as increasing densities and annexing new lands. Design attractive neighborhoods that offer housing within walking distance to schools, jobs, shopping, and services, and streamline the permitting process for affordable and workforce housing. I read those because it's significant that much of what we have done in the last 3 years has really been geared towards those objectives. Okay? A lot of what our planning department has done has been geared towards those. The final category.
On that last one, I thought we had added the fast track under that last one by pre-approving some plans.
We did. Yes, as a matter of fact, it's not completed, but part of this budget was to create 3 designs of houses that could be, someone could walk in, it's already been approved, here you go, it reduces the cost that's associated with processing the building permit.
And I have the contract for that drafted, and we just need to execute it with the designer.
There's variety in what you expect to get.
Let's read.
I mean,
They would need to meet our design standards at this point, yeah.
we wouldn't want them to come out looking exactly the same, with the exception maybe.
Right,
the door
a
on the
different
other
color.
side of the address. We don't want to point out the fact that people are.
The final category that I add is market rate housing, and that's housing that is for rent or purchase without restrictions or subsidies. Now, as I mentioned, the city has had a 2-pronged approach in dealing with housing issues. The first prong of that approach has been in aid to the homeless category. The second prong has been in aid to the missing middle category. The first part of our dealing with the homeless category has been contributions to outside agencies. You have on pages 6 and 7 a list of all of the organizations since 2007 that have received funds from the city. Between 2007 and 2016, we had contributed $439,525. Now, all of that went to the organizations that deal with homelessness, but much of it did. And then in 2017 and 2018, we increased our annual budget by $100,000 each year. And on page 7, you can see the contributions that were made in those years. Now, this has been a very successful program because of, first, there's no one solution for homelessness. It's interesting when you hear communities talk about homeless, the uninformed act as though homelessness is a homogeneous group of people that are all alike, and it's not. And you end up asking yourself, which homeless? And why are they homeless? And it's as varied as we are as a population. Okay. As a matter of fact, one of the most interesting things I read happened in Salt Lake City about 3 years ago. They had a very inventive program for the people that were chronically homeless. And it was very successful, except when it was working, they announced, we have solved homelessness. And what ended up happening was that the first group of people went, wait a minute, that didn't include me. And another group of people said, well, wait a minute, that didn't include me. And what was actually a really great success got totally undercut because those that should have been informed were saying, we solved homelessness. Okay.
What was the cost to the city for that program?
Salt Lake, I don't remember off the top of my head, so I can find out.
Also, Ron, the county gave $31,000 in 2018 to 3 agencies from Lincoln City to add to that total amount.
Okay. Okay. The second reason why it has been successful is it does reward successful organizations. A group of 3 counselors reviews all of the applications. They review it for how well they have done in the past. I might add another part that has been very successful is there's been very few strings attached. And so it's allowed the organizations to use it for a wide variety. Now, up until the last 2 years, the amounts that were contributed to any one were not significant to worry about, do we need to put a lot of strings on it? However, when we started giving $45,000 at a time, then the pressure came to put more strings on it. The city...
The other, I would ask you or us to also keep in mind that we do a lot of in-kind.
Yes.
To the same group, so to speak, whether it's free rent, for, like Meals on Wheels or backpacks, or and then forgiveness of property taxes for housing. Nonprofits get reduction, if not excluded.
I did not bring that information with me, but I'll supply that to you.
But it's just, as a kind of a footnote, it's just not cash.
That's true.
Just my point.
That's true, and it is significant in the
is.
amount. Yes. 3 is that the city isn't duplicating efforts. We're not trying to recreate or do something that's being done. And then the 4th is that private programs are much more adaptable than government programs to the needs of those who are being served. A second course of action, which is one we have done a little, but not a lot, is to encourage the county in their actions. In 2012, the county adopted At Home in Lincoln City County 2.0 plan. I won't go through these, but it was quite a ambitious plan. I haven't been able to quite figure out how much of it they've accomplished. I haven't seen the 2016 plan. I don't know if they updated it or not, but you can see that they have a very, very ambitious plan, and they did look between 2015 and 2020 and identified the tasks. I'm on page 9. To identify housing units for those leaving incarceration, improving discharge planning from incarceration and other institutionalization, address needs of teens aging out of foster care, single point of entry, no wrong door approach, develop programs to encourage supportive private landlords to rent to potential tenants, and better data collection, analysis, and presentation. And then Councilor Casper had sent to me a list of the partners the county has used or is using to meet those housing needs. And again, we won't go through these, but it is very, very interesting to review and to read. A third option that's available to the city is to provide city services or more city services or different kinds of city services to this category of the homeless. The ones that we are hearing the most about as I talk with you is transitional housing, whether that be the city is operating or the city is facilitating the operation of transitional housing. That facilitation could become in the form of owning a building that is leased or loaned or rented or operated without rent to an organization. Again, that's a discussion that I know is of interest to some of you, as I have spoken to you about this. Any questions as we leave the introduction of the part on homelessness and start talking about the missing middle?
I think you did a good job.
Okay. The second thing that we have worked towards is the missing middle, and trying to address the cost of housing. This one's a fascinating one because much of what we have done has dealt with either remodels, upgrades, or new housing. And again, the missing middle is defined as those between 60 to 120% of median household income. The housing needs analysis used the counties, which is $42,000 per household, and in Lincoln City was $35,000. Now, I might add that those numbers are about 5 years old now, and we don't have an update on them since. To put that into perspective of what that actually means, for rent to go from 50% to 120% is housing that would cost $543 per month to $1,273 per month for a family of four. Okay? It differs depending upon the breakup of the family, but for a family of four, that's what would be considered as the workforce housing. For ownership of a home, that would go between $105,000 and $252,000. Okay, so that's kind of the ballpark that you're looking at for workforce housing. Now, it's interesting to note as we look at the projection of what our needs in the city will be, the housing needs analysis identifies that for future housing needs, we will need approximately 1,814 homes over the next 20 years. That's about 90 homes per year. This year, Lindsay, if I recall, we're on track to having about 70.
Correct. In the last few years, we've been between the 58 to 65 range.
Of that 90, you would need about 16 workforce housing units per year. Okay, so a total of 333 or 334 would be required over the next 20 years. Again, important to note, that is all dealing with new occupants. That does not deal with existing populations.
Let the record show.
Rick Mark has arrived,
Thank you.
And tan.
straight from PDX.
Good job. So, Ron, would you just say that last paragraph again? Just
So starting with the housing,
just,
the amounts.
how many we have, how many we should have, and what's our goal?
Based upon the housing and needs analysis, the city will need about 1,814 residences. I don't want to say homes, residences, over the next 20 years, about 90 per year. Of that 90 per year, the city will need 16 and a half workforce housing units. Whether they're apartments, single-family, duplexes, whatever, accessory dwellings, there's a wide variety of them, but it would need about 16 and a half per year. Okay,
Workforce? That was workforce?
that's workforce. That's for those that are between 60 and 120% of the median household income. Now, Allison's going to help me a little bit with the next part to make sure I don't screw it up. But this is why we call it the missing middle. as we have been looking at developing our own property, what we're finding is that the market rate is taking care of itself. Those people that are earning 100% of the median household income are able to find housing at market rate. We're finding that those that are below the 60% are able to find the necessary assistance to find housing. What we're finding is that middle, this is why we call it the missing middle, there is very little that is available to aid people in that 60 to 100% of the median household income. Did I get that right?
In addition to home ownership for 100% and up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's significant because much of the work that we have done over the last little while, especially in the area of planning, has been geared to that missing middle group. So we have 8 ordinances. I don't think this may be, I'm not sure this is comprehensive. I think I may have missed a couple, but I have identified 8 ordinances that have been adopted since 2014, which are meant to help bring down the construction cost or the conversion cost. You're familiar with the tiny house developments, off-street parking requirements, the 4 flat dwellings, and so forth. Beginning on page 19, 20, and 21 are all potential actions we can take in the development process. Now, one of the interesting parts about this, and I've had the same discussion with the city managers in the county and other planners, we've done a lot to change our ordinances to create opportunities for workforce housing. But very little, if any, has actually been used to create workforce housing. And when I bring that up, one of the things, we're not sure why. It could be that no one really wants to live in an accessory dwelling. No one really wants to live in a tiny house, although that's a new ordinance. It could be that we're not marketing it well enough. Not sure, but we're not seeing the demand for the supply that we've been trying to create.
I just want to say that I think you're exactly right. And to that end is why a few of us were trying to get some tiny houses here during community days, and we did our very best effort. Riley was the only one who actually snagged one, but hopefully it's still.
He wants to. I mean, he's going to come.
But I think part of it is just what you just said, marketing and bringing them in. You know, the tiny houses, people kind of think of those. I think of maybe they're somewhere else or whatever. But if they saw one, you could imagine themselves in it. And the expense doesn't have to be that great.
He's been doing it.
64,000 about.
Yeah, he's been doing it 18 years. Making them.
So I'm just supporting what you just said.
Okay, thank you.
We just have to go out there and sell it.
Actually, if people wanted a second home, that would be perfect. And they could rent out their VRD for those who live here.
Sure, sure. The second part that we actually have not done, but are considering and are bringing forward to you tonight, is expanding the city's toolbox for things that we have offered in our urban renewal district to go beyond that and to the rest of the city. So I'm on page 22. So let me give you. So let me just go through these because I think it's significant. In our urban renewal toolbox, we have 2 tools that we use. We have a mixed-use housing loans that provide loans for second-story residential construction of existing commercial buildings. And then we have a workforce housing loans, which provides loans for residential construction, meeting the local workforce market, which we defined. Now, those are the toolboxes that we have within our urban renewal districts. Now, a couple things that are significant about that. The urban renewal district is going to go away. when that goes away, if your toolbox only is geared towards the urban renewal district, it also goes away. And so one of the things that we are bringing tonight to consider is to expand the urban renewal toolbox to be used in all areas of the city. We mentioned the two programs that are already in place, but others could include expand facade improvement loan program, offer mixed-use housing loans, offer workforce missing middle housing loans, expand energy efficiency loans, offer prepaid development fees, offer infrastructure partnership tools, and offer Brownsfield assistance tools. All of those could be expanded into that. Now, I mentioned earlier that our discussion has budget implications. You notice that every one of those puts the city in a position of being a bank, essentially. And so there are some really big budget implications that are applied to that.
I have two things. One is, thanks for this list. I really got excited when I saw the list because it went a little bit beyond what I was thinking, and I just really like this list. My second thing is brownfields. Do we have a brownfield other than Taft? Or
So brownfield is defined as real or perceived contamination. So if you drive by a property and it has a fence around it, or it just isn't redeveloping, it's been sitting for a number of years, that can be defined as a brownfield. So
even without testing?
Even without testing, yeah. So really this would be a way for people who don't know if they have any contamination and they don't know why it's not selling. It's unknown, so it's a risk to a developer. This could help people do that level 1 environmental assessment, which we did with our 4 urban renewal properties, so that we could say to the developer, look,
It's ready to go.
as far as we know, there's no problem with brownfields.
And I guess, thank you. I guess the third thing is there a way in which we can partner with a bank or a credit union or some lending
To be a guarantor.
to do some kind of partnership? And I don't,
Yeah,
maybe through
so-
the loan program, you have some ideas.
Sure, that, and really with, when we do the loan program, when we did the facade improvement and then when we did the additional tools, we did talk with every bank in town. We said we don't want to compete with you, we want to collaborate with you, we want you to know what our tools are, and we want to know what yours are, or at least be able to pass people along to you. And that all went very well, and the banks were very supportive, they didn't have any objection. Now, they can't offer anything that's 0% or below market rate. So in that case, there really aren't any partners. We do partner with COG, and they are the ones who do our loan servicing. So we're kind of already partnering. We can look if you're interested in having a stronger partnership in something specific. I'm happy to look into that.
The final thing that we do in the area of the missing middle is developing our own property. We currently have 9 properties that we're working with different individuals or organizations to develop. Of those, five of those have a housing component in them. 2 are specifically workforce housing that have about, we're looking at about 80 units that will go into those. Those are the ones by Northeast 25th Street. And then we are including workforce housing as a component of the village's development. So anyway, so those are the areas that we have been working on in planning, in urban renewal, and in our economic development to try to assist and move forward the missing middle. So the real crux of the discussion that we're hoping to have with you tonight is, do we stay the course? Are we doing the right thing? Are we doing what we should be doing? Or do we change courses, or completely, like in 180, or do we add something to this that we have not been doing? Whether that's in the missing middle, or the homeless, or the permanent supportive housing. So that's really the discussion that the ideas that I have heard from speaking with you guys individually has been stay the course. Okay, we're doing great. The other has been to add more services in the area of the homeless, specifically in the area of the
Transitional.
thank you, of the transitional housing. And so those are really kind of the two biggest things that I have heard from you in that. So, Mr. Mayor, that's kind of where we sit, and turn it to you guys to do your thing and help us know what to do.
So, what's your sense after hearing this course?
I just have a quick, off the top of my head, is transitional housing, yes, absolutely. We really make a dent in our homeless. We, like you said, it isn't gonna be for everybody, but it's a whole chunk and, that we can start moving forward on. I don't see the city having a hands-on as far as the provided services go, but I do see that the city could purchase the building and sell it to a nonprofit or rent it or lease it or whatever the negotiations could be. And then as far as our other type of housing, I just really think that marketing, Allison's done such a fabulous job with Southgate to get our own properties up and running, and all of the good work that's been done before, all the planning. I mean, all the pieces are kind of lined up, but who knows about it? We know about it, but I don't know who else does. And I just wonder if there was another push generally for, to be able to come in and just get plans that are already approved. That's huge. So and I don't know how many people know about that. Would they know unless they came like up to the counter and said, I'm thinking about developing a duplex or a fourplex or something. They don't even, maybe they have no idea that there's the floor flat housing or that there's opportunity for cluster housing. And I just think we did all this good planning, and now we have to do the next step to see if there's real interest. So that's what I see. And I love all these new tools moving over into that. I know that's a lot of money. I'll have to figure that out.
Yeah, I agree with transitional housing. We've spent over $700,000 in our outside agencies since '07. If we had invested in some sort of homogeneous organization, housing to get it moving along, I think that would have been helpful. I think if we were to purchase something, a building, or put out a proposal for qualifications, I think it might alleviate some of the homelessness that we have. And we currently do have a resource center, which was a goal of our homeless situation. So that is being funneled into our city. Newport has the Samaritan House, which is their transitional. Eugene started out with Opportunity Village, which was interesting because that was in 2012 when they wanted a safe place for the homeless. So the council created a pilot program for low-cost housing. And then in 2013, they created these bungalows and tiny houses and whatever. But out of that came a nonprofit called Square One. And so this nonprofit, which developed out of this transitional housing, has gone on to Emerald Village, which is property on site, and was also purchased by Square One. And now the third phase of it is the Cottage Coalition. And that's concerned individuals and organizations in that city of Eugene that now the whole community has evolved into helping the transitional housing situation.
So it's gone from homeless to transitional to ownership. It's perfect.
And I feel like it's time for Lincoln City to step up and do that. We've tried to coordinate services and groups, and it hasn't worked. And volunteers, bless their hearts, they burn out. And I think that's has to have a little bit more organization to it. I'm also concerned about PSH. Because you say the city doesn't touch that, and we have
What's PSH?
permanent.
We do in some sense. Well, we do in some things. For example, we have worked and helped
State housing,
facilitate
permanent state housing.
with the rich, with some of the permitting and things like that.
So what is our role, what is our role?
But we have not had a large role.
Okay, so if that group or organization were to come to the city and say, hey, we want to do this somewhere else, would we have a part in that to help facilitate it or help build it, or how would that work? Suppose you want to
For
build-
that type of housing, it would be really what was done in the planning and permitting process,
Well, except for the property tax.
except the property tax.
Property taxes are huge.
Yeah.
You look at the ridge, and I don't know what's value, but the taxes, and then, and it's not just the city of Lincoln City, but, you know,
But if we were to promote that type of expansion, that,
well, then you have the, is it Beach Crest? Bridge Crest? What?
Beacon Crest?
Beacon Crest, one that, and, you know, even Family Promise that owns their own building gets a tax break. I mean, so let's not forget, the
No,
property
I-
taxes are huge as far as a contribution. So I just didn't want Ron
Right.
to mislead us, and not intentionally, but, you know,
That's a huge contribution.
That's a nice contribution.
Well, I think
Well,
I just.
I agree.
I just
And
want to slide.
I don't have a bit of problem us doing it.
that's a question. I'm not saying we should do it, I'm just asking.
Where we play. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I want to make sure we recognize.
Okay.
And again, I'm sorry I didn't include that, but I will make sure I provide that information.
I mean, it's not the missing middle that we're talking about, but it also goes along with transitional housing.
I mean, to say how much, you know, if we're giving $30,000 in tax credits, I mean, that's huge. I don't know. Right,
Yeah, I
property
don't- I
taxes,
don't-
right, whatever that number is, and not just for the rich, for the other organizations and all that. I mean, I think that's going to be a fairly large and significant number that we just don't have.
And we should have it and include our own housing
We should have what?
that
That
number.
number.
Oh, I agree.
And all
Yeah.
the properties that fall under that category is reduced.
Well,
or
yeah, and
no
I think it's important that the citizens, you know, that's all, we're spending the citizens' money, you know, on that. So it's,
Or not, not collecting it.
And
but there are.
So,
wait, I'm not
All
done.
right, all right, all right.
And I love the idea of the loan program, especially facade improvement. So many of our homes could be a little more livable than they currently are. And I think that might hit the missing middle income level. I love that, I love that extra toolbox. I don't know how this, I'm unclear as to, you said we can take urban renewal money and now go to all areas of the city.
It's not take urban renewal,
No.
it's expanding the
The
toolbox.
toolbox, okay, thank you for
Yeah,
the
but
clarification.
what it really means in all of those, it would be funding the tools,
Okay,
because they all require some level of funding. And how much do we have now that's,
I think urban renewal has 500,000 in the bank that we can put out for availability, but that's for the existing programs, which is commercial buildings. We haven't, well, we did dabble in residential years ago, but it wasn't structured the way that we needed it to be structured, so it didn't work. And then on the city side, we have $100,000 for the toolbox that we have not created any tools yet. So we'll talk about that at an upcoming meeting.
So to be clear, you're expanding it to go outside of commercial businesses to being home ownership opportunities.
Yeah,
That's the
so,
proposal.
well,
that's to consider.
Okay.
yeah.
At this point, we're not making any proposal.
So similar to a facade improvement, and that you can have $20,000 to fix your business, you would propose, you're saying, hey, what if we did $20,000 for homeowners to do
Yes.
it? Additionally, could it be for potential homeowners that maybe need a down payment or something? Like, hey,
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
That's up for discussion.
But you know what I mean? To say, hey, what's the major problem to getting home ownership? And if they have everything else, and hey, here's this next chunk to help you through the other side. So
Yeah, I think we want to be careful about replicating what our partners are already doing.
sure,
So like,
not competing.
we would want to support Northwest Coastal Housing in their
Sure.
efforts to address their criteria
Sure.
of housing rather than doing.
Yeah. The other question I have is, and you kind of didn't like that idea, but if the three designs are markedly different and it could be something that is popular and I want it, instead of just blending in, it might be good as
That's
well,
what I
too.
was asking.
Oh, I thought you
I
said
want
I
them all
didn't
to be
want them.
No, she doesn't want
No,
to look
I thought you wanted them to look like everything else. That's what I heard. That's what I understood. Okay.
Deanna?
That's what I thought she said. That's what I thought she said. I thought she said, as long as they don't look like they're.
Just slip the door.
Yeah.
They just look like a regular house.
I don't still don't know.
Oh,
what you're saying.
I took it to mean that just, change the elevation. I didn't,
Thank you. All right.
What, do
She was
I?
being facetious.
no,
I want them. I would think it might be cool if they are very different and they are known to be this thing. Is that
And
not what you're saying, right? You want them to look like everything else in town. I'm confused.
I would like people to think that they were so nicely
unique and
designed
positive.
and that they would just be a nice house on the street rather than saying, hey, I got this for nothing.
Sure, you don't want them to look like shipping containers.
Well,
Right.
no, I wouldn't say that.
But I mean,
Some of those-
but I'm just hearing, so this, all right, I just so that I'm clear.
You know what I mean.
I know what
that's
you
all.
I didn't.
Mars and Venus.
We'll get to Vito when Lindsay brings it anyway.
I'll bring 3, be the exact.
Is it gonna, and how is that gonna be?
Different
Which brings me to the question of how are you going to propose to build or does, what are you going to, architectures? I mean, I don't know.
It would be an architectural firm to.
So you're going to one, are you gonna put a request out to say, hey, this is what we're looking for, and then people are gonna submit back, like, how is that process going to be? Because if you're only gonna go to one person with 3 designs,
Now, there's a two-part, as far as the design of it goes, we will use our standard process for hiring somebody to provide services to the city. Now, when you look at what those will be, the criteria is that they have to be designed to be within that missing middle. In other words, they can't design a $400,000 house and say, okay, now this is pre-approved.
Like-
The savings is not in a subsidized house. The savings comes because the process is done quicker and the house is designed to be at the 60 to 100% of the market.
sure, but if it's ugly, no one's gonna go.
Not
It's not
necessarily.
going to be ugly.
Well, that would be the key, that, I think you're right, but to Ron's point, replication of the same set of plans.
Yeah, absolutely.
Saves
Yeah,
money.
I get
And those
from
economics.
when you're at the counter to building, but I'm talking about the process of saying, hey, these are the types of houses we want, a la the thing that you wrote, saying, hey, when you, for the 8 properties, you said this is what we're doing and this is how we are. Whatever that is, will that also be similar to here?
Oh, yeah, I think planning's already gone through that
Oh,
process,
okay.
and they're at contract.
Oh,
We're at
okay.
contract.
So it's the same, that's all, I was just,
Yeah.
cool.
And back to the marketing thing, I think, you have a valid point about marketing, we need to do a better job at marketing. However, just because we make these great tools available doesn't mean the market will still bring them forward.
Right.
And so Lindsay and I have kind of brainstormed really very superficially so far, but about how can we create frequently asked questions, like, do you want to build an ADU? Here are the 10 things you need to know. Things like that are just really easy where people can pick them up at the counter. Or we could also, talk in the future about budgeting, but maybe we have a pilot program where we say, we will pay your SDCs for the first 5 accessory dwelling units, so that we can see how it goes. We can see what parts of town they're interested in. So I think there are lots of ways that we'll be working more together about how do we get people familiar with this idea of all these great things that they can do for housing.
The more you can put on our website, which hopefully would be easier to use than we have now. I can never find anything, but not never, I shouldn't say. I have a difficult time sometimes finding things that I'm looking for, but anyway, yes.
But I think in other groups, we've talked of reality. You can run this list of all the things the city has done, and they're impactful, and no results. So as Ron said, we don't know if these don't matter or there's something else hanging out there. I.e., we do know if we've limited contractors, builders, suppliers, because in this business, they're risking their own money. We have a state that loves to jam up landlords, evidently. So it's not attractive. So, what are we going to do as a city to work around that? And, then how do we, I think we learned from our 9 properties that when we let the valley folks, developers where they are, know that we've got more than one site and one opportunity, then they're interested in at least looking at us. So I think it's how we position, because we may be just marketing to the local Lincoln City hammer guy, pick up an hammer, and they're not capable of risking their own money for a loan or a project or something like that.
I was gonna say, in the old days, a city could take, and they would take out ads in the newspaper, so there'd be, and the Daily Journal. I mean, there's just, but I don't know how you do that anymore. Tap on the shoulder.
We did that with our development offering, and that's why we got 22 properties, or 22 responses.
So there you go.
Wow, there were 22 properties.
But I guess one of the things that we've done is, we bought property, we the city, bought property in the downtime when property was cheap. And that was, at the time, construed to be, that's the subsidy that we would have to come out of the ground, help people. So, to your point, do the numbers. It takes 20 to 30 grand down off a market rate property to, have the median income, house. So that 30 grand is a lot when you think of it. I mean, a lot, like dirt, a building lot, if not more. So that's why we did that. So I'm a little bit hesitant to, since we have that, and to be trying to come up with all these other cash-sensitive drain on general fund programs when you've got dirt.
Lots of
And we haven't, all the studies and groups that are looking at housing around the country or around the state, we're still kind of waiting for, do these changes in ordinance produce results? Nobody's been able to tell us we're on the right things. And, I think we are, but I wish somebody could say, yeah, that one really works, or a combination of them. In the meantime, I'm hesitant to be shifting, whether it's to fund a toolbox, that sounds good, it's more things, but, and let our dirt just sit there.
I think we can, if we think, we can't do it today, but if we think carefully about all the toolbox things and all the ideas, and maybe we do wrap something up in and Judy was saying, a pilot project of some variety, that we can try out some of these things. One thing that comes to mind is many, many, many years ago, like a whole nother lifetime ago, my husband was building a house with the construction group that he was working with, and it was on the coast. But we were in Portland, and so they had to find a place for the people to stay. And that was like the clincher for a couple of houses that they built, that they needed a place for the crew to live. So while they were building it, and that's like 3 months or so.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's probably,
depending on
yeah.
the weather. So I think that's something. Well, we keep saying
Right
we're
answer to the cost.
I'm
It
sorry.
adds to the cost of a
Yeah, and I'm
contract.
just saying.
Only because we dealt with that a lot, because we couldn't get local, and we always got charged to have the workers stay down here, which is part of it, and that's a lot of it. I'm curious, just we have all this, and I mean, I see coming in new, it's like being on the outside before going, oh my God, homelessness, and we're not doing anything, and I look at this now and go, you guys have done a lot. I just think the community doesn't know what's being done, because all I hear is, my rent's going to go up, or I could lose my place at any time, and there's no place for me to go, because it's usually renters that I hear that from. But it's amazing what the city does. I'm very proud to be in the city. You guys have done a great job.
I also read one comment in here somewhere, this 120 pages.
Yeah,
read it.
Here we go, I know I read that.
Where one person was in charge of rental housing, and she said nobody had come to me to see how many are available or what's out there, or nobody has taken a survey to see what each property has available, and looked at,
Right.
renter,
Right.
renter facilities.
Why does one
We
have
haven't done that.
Why does one place have 327 people waiting?
Yeah.
And one has none?
Yeah, and so
Why?
they said, and I thought, well, that's kind of astute.
That's an interesting point, because last week, met with the city managers for our monthly luncheon. This was the topic. And one of the approaches that we have been discussing, not just us, but the group that met a week or so ago, is when there are offerings for that cities may have, combining those offerings so that you have a much larger group. The question that we discussed, though, was, so who's going to be the one that's coordinating that and getting with different developers in this area or outside this area, saying, here's the property we have, or whatever needs to be done with the discussion. And one of the conclusions we came with was that the ideal place for that to happen is the county organization, because they're going to be the ones that we're all part of the county, but the county's not. But we're not a part of Newport. Newport's not a part of us. So that was an interesting discussion on that coordination effort and who actually does that for any type of regional approach.
So we are in contact with a consultant who is helping with our opportunity zone properties, because two of the housing and one mixed use property are located in the opportunity zone, which is a way to basically defer taxes or pay less taxes. It also encourages investment in rural areas. And this person has been brainstorming with Business Oregon to basically set up a computer system where cities like us could respond and fill out a sheet that, hey, we have this property, it's 3 residential lots and they're ready, or they've passed environmental, or they haven't, or whatever the information is. Submit that to the site, and then that site gets queried for investors. Now, the idea is that this could happen outside of the opportunity zone. I mean, if there are investors like Meyer Memorial Trust or Ford Family Foundation have directives for their larger organization to do affordable housing, then maybe it's 10 coastal, 10-unit affordable housing projects. And Northwest Coastal Housing has one of them, and we have another one, and you just bundle them all together, and then those investors can do that. So there's lots of talk, which is really exciting, about how can we, in hard areas to develop, how can we get more incentive, kind of like what we did with our property development offering, to get people's attention and then have a better leveraging of construction costs and things like that.
So Mayor, may I kind of summarize what I've been hearing so far?
As long as it's all middle housing, right? Middle, the missing missile? Mid.
We'll do all of that. But
Just
what I am hearing, though, is the section of the permanent supported or supportive housing, with what we've been able to do with these organizations, the property tax subsidies and everything else. We're going to continue to focus our attention on the other 2 areas beyond where these developments may occur, and where they may end up with the property tax breaks or moving them through the process. Okay, but all of the other discussion has really been in the areas of the homeless category and the missing middle category. Now, what I've heard in those discussions, in your discussions, is that if we're going to consider something in the homeless category, it's in the transitional housing area. What I have heard in the missing middle category has been so far more, while there's a lot of interest in the funding of these programs, it's more of focusing on staff get with it and develop more of our property.
Market.
Well, no, I mean, it's the land. Right now, we've got about 35 to 40 acres that we're looking at developing. 25 of that is really geared towards affordable housing, workforce housing, missing middle housing. We have
Those are
some.
the projects that we've talked about.
Pardon me?
Those are the projects that we've already.
These are the projects we've talked about. Now, we have considerable amount of other property that's available as well. And so what I'm hearing a little bit is, let's start the process of moving that forward.
Sorry, do you mean, just so I understand it, so do you mean like what Allison has been doing with our 9 properties? Kind of
Yes,
getting them
yes.
ready to push out the door?
I would like it to be more ownership than rental, because there's try to find out the actual number of rental units in Lincoln City, apartment rental units. That number is going to be, I think, quite large. And we have some that are just coming online soon. And a lot of those numbers for the 1 and 2 bedroom homes that could be those first starter homes, unfortunately, are short-term rentals. And so if there was a way in which to prevent those from becoming short-term rentals, I think that would really help. The ownership of this, what are we really saying? Are we as council saying we want to create more rental homes? Or are we saying we want people to own here? We're talking about the 60 to 120, but for what? For ownership or for rental? And it feels like a lot of this is geared towards rental. And I would like to say we are encouraging home ownership.
I think we're doing both through the land trust partnership with Prop Ground. The Fernwood property will be 60 units, and anywhere up to half of them will be ownership. That's all ownership. And then the other 2 properties are the 80 units that Mr. Chandler mentioned are rental.
Right, and I know that, but
Yeah.
I was concerned about the Fernwood proposal going back to market value too soon.
Yeah, those are details that we can still talk about in the future and work out.
I have to agree with Riley. I think that home ownership, even for the 60 to 120, which is the ones that are providing all the service to our vacation rental people and to our retired group, if you get them to own, they own the community. They're part of the community. Rental is transition. I just lost my job, now I'm out of it.
and you're living this lifestyle, this month to month.
Whether I'm going to
Right.
get kicked out or not.
It's just not conducive to this really permanency of the community. And I would like to say, hey, we're building community by establishing really good ways that the 60 to 90, since the 100%, will be fine, but, that they can own. I'm really.
Yeah, homeownership is a big deal, and we really want to make sure that if people want to own a home, we're giving them every opportunity, and a lot of that is having all levels of the continuum available. I heard someone say the market rate rental units you're building today are the affordable housing of tomorrow. Because as time goes on, we get new units on board, and then the really older units that aren't keeping up with maintenance, they either get replaced or they just stay as a really low rent. And the idea is that if we have more units at every part of the continuum, people can get in the right size unit and the habitable units. And
Sure, and in theory, that sounds great, but in reality, you have people paying $1,200 for terrible mold-infested places.
yes, and
period.
we have people at 30% of median household income that are working 2 and 3 jobs
Right.
as part of our tourism
Right.
economy.
Right.
So calling it workforce, we have workforce. My dad is retired at 73, and he works 3 jobs.
Right.
So
It just doesn't make sense.
we can't pigeonhole, we just have to do our best to provide
As many.
as many types of the housing options, yeah.
I had a thought on this. The facade improvement loan was on that list, is expanding that, and it just made me think, the house behind my house in Culver City has been sitting vacant with a, vacant notice on it since we moved in. until recently, and some family is in there, they've been working away at it. And I wonder if some sort of facade improvement type loan could be made available to people who are willing to take over foreclosed properties and fix them. Because you could look at these foreclosed properties and, oh my God, what's it going to take to make that livable again? But people with skills, and they're getting in with the small down payment, and they're taking a property away, relieving the bank of a property that the bank doesn't want. I mean, they're really doing a service, and so.
But you have people looking every single day for foreclosed. I mean, there are people who are buying third floor homes
They
for
need to
that.
get over that hump, and I wonder if there are a fund to help them renovate.
Go
Something to think about.
ahead.
We also, we've had the facade improvement loan for 20 years now, and that's for commercial properties. And we've done probably 45 loans, but we haven't done 145. So it still also comes down to what kind of person afford. And in the past, the county has had programs where, a house might not look blighted. It might look fine, but the roof is failing. And so only if you're inside do you know that it's a problem. And I know Lindsay, as part of her work on the housing effort for the county, is looking at how to tap into that county fund again that's been sitting there for a while, because then people can get their roof fixed and it just goes as a lien on their house. So when the home sells, then that's when it gets paid back, which I think we like our money coming back in so we can loan it out again. So there are lots of options with residential to talk about.
I dropped some flyers off at City Hall that I picked up with Habitat, and they're got a program for that kind of fix-up stuff. That it's income-driven, but to fix, and that's the fund, a similar fund that Allison's talking about, that we did block grant money through the county that got washed, and that was to use for fix-up and repair, not to build.
For low income.
Lower income, that kind of stuff. The other is, again, it's education, but lenders don't want the foreclosed property. So when they get a buyer, they'd love to have cash, but it's a great time, again, for negotiating with that seller, the lender, that it's a piece of crap. So how about through your retail bank, I get a home improvement loan, and so a good realtor would work with these
Yes.
not to promote anybody. Yeah, but then, there are ways. I love the conversation. We need to find partners. I'll tell you, for 35 years in the business, we're not a lender. I can tell you, this is not a lender organization, nor are we a builder organization. And don't turn into one.
Allison mentioned, Meyer Memorial Trust and Ford Family Foundation. I mean, are those organizations putting out big funds for affordable housing? And I wonder if the city, so rather than using city money, could the city be the manager, sort of the conduit? If that sort of grant is available.
Anytime a grant has been available and we've had capacity and been able to implement right away, we have applied for those grants. We applied for the Oregon Housing Community Services grant, which I think was $5 million. Proud Ground received, I think, $430,000, and we requested $500,000. So we did a bold ask, and we were, I think, 9th out of 30, and I think they funded the first 5. So we were close, but Proud Ground is able to do down payment assistance for homeownership in Lincoln County. So we're still getting a benefit, even though we didn't get the grant. So yes, we are watching for grants from larger institutions, and where we can, we take advantage of them.
So back to our property villages, to be named differently soon, I hope, Counselor. I know you're coming up with something. But there's nothing to preclude us as a group, because we're the owners. We can put a cap on anything. I mean, we're subsidizing, quite frankly, encouraging developers to build. The developer will build anything that you want him to. So the reason he doesn't build $250,000 houses when there's a market for $450,000 is he can make them for $450,000. So all you have to do is make sure he makes the same amount on the 250 as he would on the 450, and he'll make 250 all the time. It's a small number. You can do that to meet, kind of, and you can price it. If you want $250,000 houses, we can do another circle up in the villages that are single level, 3-bedroom, mixed for seniors and health starters. I mean, all sorts of things.
Is that a workforce price?
You bet it would.
Yeah, 250.
That's on the top end.
And your teachers would swarm there, all the kind of stuff. So, we can do those kind of things. And that's kind of, as owners, that's what you can direct. But understand, the nice thing, you're not having to chunk it with 30,000 extra cash. You've got the land that you're negotiating with.
Which is a big deal.
It
Other
is a huge
cities
deal.
don't have it.
Right,
They're just
right.
jealous.
And you can
of
put
us.
a lien on it. It's not a windfall. You can protect that.
And I think like Fernwood is coming along. I think that's a
Yeah, it won't be 250 price.
Right. But
good, I know.
But
Don't forget.
So I would just ask this group to think about, the tools you do have that aren't costing you, money out of the pocket. And maybe, because Ron and Alsa brought up the other properties that the city owns, quite frankly, I think we passed over them at first go-around to put these other 9 out. You could just sell those, turn them, and there's your cash. I mean, why screw around with developers trying to figure out what they want? Just put them up for sale and pocket the money. I mean, I haven't even seen them, so I'm just spouting off. But if you want to build a fund,
You talk about the properties that Proud Ground had already decided
no,
they couldn't use,
Exactly.
so we just simply sell it.
That's-
That's the next phase.
Or they're in the Sonoma Inundation Zone,
Right.
we don't want to subsidize
Right.
housing.
Right.
Yeah.
So and that could generate cash to do your toolbox. So
the
those are the kinds
transitional
of things.
housing
You gotta sell something to pay for something else.
So is that marketing? Is that selling those properties? It's investors?
Anybody who wants to buy.
So let's have a list of those then and go through.
Yeah, like what are they?
With the other 9.
Well, won't that put it back on the tax rolls then?
Right.
Yeah,
So we can.
and if there's interest even in
Yeah,
that,
we could pay for employees.
Something.
So it's, So talk about transitional housing. Help me, transitional housing, also, as I figure out, has services attached to them. Provided by, hopefully, a nonprofit, correct?
Right. They need it, I guess. I mean, if you think
We
about where they
identified
are.
4 that we're all familiar with. Helping Hands is one. And by the way, Helping Hands has extended an invitation to any of you who would like to go and a tour of their facility, whether it's in Tillamook or Astoria. They just need to know the days of the week. For them, Fridays work the best, but they just need a few days advance notice so they can make sure they're ready for you to come. So
I encourage people to do that.
Is there a reason why we don't tour Lincoln County?
They're there.
Where?
They're Tillamook and Astoria.
They advertise they're in Lincoln County.
They are. There's one house here, one
It's not the
house
same.
they can.
That's not the
It
same.
has
It's not the same.
Massive.
Yeah, it's a
Program.
different
Okay.
program.
That answers that.
But anyway, so Helping Hands, Family Promise, the Samaritan House, I think is what it's called, and My Sister's Place are all examples of the transitional housing that is taking people from homeless to a point where they're able to get into housing, but it includes a lot of services to help them be prepared to go into housing.
With the caveat that the transitional housing program that we're familiar with, specifically from Helping Hands, is not going to be 100% replacement for what the warming shelter now does.
It is not an emergency shelter in that anybody can come in. They go by referral, and referral means that somebody will then be eligible to become part of their program. It's not a cold weather shelter where anybody can just come in. They were very, very clear about that.
But there is this question that I say not 100% replacement, but based on nothing at all, I anticipate that it's going to be some percentage. It takes some percentage from Orem, and the question is how many people are left over. It's still in May.
And I think one of the unique things about Helping Hands that's different than the other nonprofits that we have here is that they have that more emergency, because you're right, they do take people who have, they're just off the street, but they have to be referred. But it is a shorter term. They have men's facilities, women's facilities, and families. Families either with the dad or families either with the mom, and they're all housed in the same place, and all of the resources are brought in, and so it's pretty efficient.
So, big question with that. I'm not even sure how to approach this. Is there a way to help them get a building in Lincoln City?
Do they want to build it?
They would have to
Yeah.
have.
They eventually want to buy it.
Yeah, I bet they eventually want to buy it. Everybody wants to buy it.
They've been really successful. I can't remember how many cities they're in now. but
13
they-
cities, 4 counties.
And what's the source of revenue?
They
Meyer
have,
and Ford
Yeah.
family and.
And I added another one, and
College.
how long is Meyer and everybody else going to keep?
No, they
Popping it in.
have federal housing.
Yeah.
They mentioned grants, it just popped up on the radar from the federal housing. I was astonished that they were already on top of it. They have 6 full-time employees that do nothing but this type of thing. And so they have a revenue enough to afford stability in their employment. And then the people who live at the houses also contribute and pay a certain amount of rent. And then I was also at the Mental Health Advisory Committee in Newport last week. And all of their services are funneling into one location. That is the model the state's looking at. So that just kind of blends into
they get state funding too.
Mhm.
They get state funding.
state. They get state, federal, all kinds of funding.
My issue with transitional is, I don't hear anybody beating down the door, so that's just observing. You know, you guys went out and found Helping Hands. They've been in the county, they've known the county, and yet you had to drag them back here. So, well,
I don't think it's like that at all. I mean,
wait a second. They have been in the county, and they know the issues. They have a facility in Lincoln City, I guess, right?
Men only.
So who cares? They're very familiar.
That's a very narrow.
They're very familiar.
Target.
Okay, maybe that facility is, but the organization isn't. So they've known Lincoln County. And quite frankly, they've heard the noise, they've read the paper, everything else, until I'm complimenting you for at least reaching out, because we're looking for results and what's going on. And now all of a sudden they're hot to trot.
well, he told us he's not going to come into a community that doesn't want them. He came before us and said,
Right.
"Look, I'm only going to go into communities that want us there, who are going to help us, not face resistance."
I think part of what I'm gathering, of course, I'm constantly reminding myself new to this, is that in Lincoln City, the effort had been made, and the warming shelter had some success, but they really run into kind of a stone wall. And the question was, because they have no idea what they're going to, we don't know what they're going to do next year. As it stands right now, the current situation is there's no warming shelter next winter. The group that runs the warming shelter has pretty much been, not warmly welcomed. So there are people looking for alternatives. Now, I don't think you can really, Helping Hands, from what I know of them, they've put facilities in one city, in another city, in another city, in another city. To fault them because they haven't made it down here yet seems like not really the right way to look at it. I mean,
Okay. Well, let's back off of that for a second. But we'll agree, they've been operating in the county. They know the county, right? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing against them. From what I called the mayors, and they all think well of Helping Hands. So it's a good organization. I'm good. I hope all I'm getting at us a little bit is to think through the process and what are we looking for and want to do. Because I'm sorry, but I'll hang up every organization that wants to buy a building, and of course, you be the bank. They'll make payments, and make it not a year contract, 20-year contract. You bet. And being a banker, I said before, I don't want that property back. I make money loaning money. So the last thing the city should not want, or doesn't want, is that property back. So I want to make sure I'm dealing with an organization that will buy the building. I don't care what they write about, they'll buy it. Now, hold on. So that's all I'm suggesting is so I guess what I'm saying is I'm not interested in the city going out and buying a building, hoping they will come. It's not a ballpark.
Nor am I.
So let's Helping Hands answer the questions and get us comfortable with they're the one we want to be the anchor tenant in a building or something else.
That's why I think it's a good idea.
That's why
To
we
make-
nuance
make
it.
the field
Well,
trip.
no,
That's just what I was gonna say. I think all your answers are there, but you need to go there. You
And
need
those
to
are-
take
those-
the
the same
trip
questions
to
for
go
that.
there.
And that's all I
And
want
that's-
to get on record, with you is just because, and the other is the funding aspect.
Don't
you know.
forget
I think-
don't forget the component. We're thinking about a building that right now is sitting right in the middle of the city, deteriorating, and it's a bit of an eyesore, and would be a big benefit to the city to get it fixed up.
There are no, in fact, Kate Brown is using Helping Hands as a transitional model. There is no model in the state that does not exist. Cities are calling Helping Hands from across the state asking to come to their city. They want to stay sort of like in their coastal area that they can drive to. They haven't had to put out a request for proposal because people have been calling them. And they have the ability and the crew to renovate buildings. They even have environmental licenses. They know about asbestos, so that cuts down on the cost. They're the ones who have all the capabilities and the foresight to do this.
You have a track record.
They have a track record.
Yep.
Just come visit. Whatever else, you're building, your finance, don't worry, you're not gonna be stuck with a building in your pocket. I think it's something we need to talk about and how to pay for it or whatever, but we've spent over $700,000 and we still haven't solved anything to help that population.
So, again, I don't know some of the numbers, and maybe there are numbers that qualify for transitional housing.
That's a hard question.
Because, and that's where you were going, we've heard from the warming shelter folks who shelter people in emergencies such as weather-related. And we get all sorts of stats, but it's really, I think, a small amount of that group that really take on the resource services and benefit that, that go into, that would bump into transition housing. And again, Helping Hands has talked about, they're drug-free, alcohol-free, work your tail off, all these kind of things, which all these other ones also have. An emergency shelter is, coming out of the weather and then you're gone. Don't act up during the night. But I don't know how many of these people qualify for transition.
I think there's another way to look at it, which is maybe the other side of it. The warming shelter, that's one thing, that's getting people out of the cold. The other thing that Homeless Solutions does is they coordinate services and they do all of that other stuff. That's not just the warming shelter people, that's a bigger chunk of folks. And that's more of what I think you ought to think about when you think about transitional housing. There are people that are struggling and having a hard time. So I think there's another group out there that isn't captured in the numbers that you've seen from the warming shelter.
So are you abandoning the warming shelter needs and going to transitional housing?
No, I
There's
think
they're two separate things.
I understand. We haven't even touched warming shelter. You've already said they're not going to exist next winter.
That's one person's belief. That's not anything.
It's you, Aaron, it's you.
So that's not fact. But when that man came in, he says, we are not a warming shelter.
I heard him.
So where do you propose those people who are having trouble securing and finding place from homelessness, where do you put them to live, to bring themselves back up? And that's what Helping Hands is the place to put them that say, hey, look, I'm getting my stuff together, and I'm gonna work at it, and you're gonna live here under these rules, and you're gonna pay rent, and you're gonna establish yourself, and you're gonna bring yourself out.
I hear
Where is that?
I hear you.
What is that?
That's what we're talking about
Yeah,
right here.
and so-
I agree.
so-
So I shifted. If you didn't notice, it was a shift because a year ago, we were all anxious about a warming shelter.
Sure.
energy shelter.
Sure.
I don't think we've talked about it at all tonight.
That's
I mean, we were eager.
But as we
Some were
learn,
eager to buy a building.
but as we learn
So
what
where I'm
services
going
are
is-
at, we can bring it out into the
Are
community.
you ready to do all components under homelessness?
Wait. Alan also said something else, which is that he, Helping Hands, doesn't have the same thing as like the warming shelter that we think of. But that another organization could do that. It could happen in the same building. It's just that their staff, it is just that their staff does not do that. So that doesn't mean that it can't happen even in that same
In that
building.
building. So
Just somebody-
another tenant in a building is what you're.
I mean, that's just one of that's something he said. I'm just
So
saying.
that's kind of what I'd like, because, it's all adding up too. I've got the cash register going here.
Sure.
That's,
Sure. But I think
bingo. Because we're at the budget. That's why we're here, right? And so we can hash out these kind of things.
You need to go for a trip.
Yep.
Go north.
I love driving.
Young man. Tell him
There's also a piece of information from the resource center. In our
The
North County
resource center attached to the
warming
warming
shelter,
shelter.
yes.
Okay.
At this mental health meeting, there's only one person collecting the data in Lincoln City regarding the status and how many, the data, the actual data. There's no data like how many people are involved, what do they do, how many return, what are their age, records, police records, whatever it is, housing, emergency. That's not been collected except through the resource center warming shelter. And those are the programs that are being developed through Helping Hands, which are going nationwide. They need to collect this data. So they're all under one database. So when you come in, you just plug in your database and you know who's who and where they've been. So it's a coordination of services. And that is starting to be done here. That's the only one person in this whole city that's doing that is through the resource center. So it's
Just delivering the services.
collecting the data, yes. Attending the meetings for the Mental Health Advisory Committee.
So they're just giving that entity's data, and not, Family Promise does,
No, they're gathering the
Have
data from
data.
the population that they work with.
well, I understand. Well, so they're missing these other places then. Who's ever using the data,
Nobody's using the data yet, I'm just saying that it's being collected.
so I guess, if it's all being collected from the resource center, then Family Promise data isn't going into the machine.
Not yet, not that I know of.
So
They don't exchange.
Most organizations will have their own data.
Yeah.
I mean, they keep it. But part of me is, okay, if we have Helping Hands comes in, then does the resource who gets funding no longer get funding because it all goes to Helping Hands? I mean, when you're talking about we have organizations out there that do get funding, and all of a sudden we bring somebody else in, then do all these other become unemployed? Do they, you know what I mean?
I do, I've asked that question, and the sense I've gotten from the resource center / warming shelter people is they would be more than happy to have any organization take over what they do if they can do it. So the numbers that we're hearing from the resource center is that a significant percentage of the people that use the warming shelter now do benefit from those, and so that's sort of what Helping Hands does. So this is, wishful thinking,
Talking
but
resource, I keep getting confused between
Resource-
warming shelter and the resource.
think of different resource centers.
Different
at the
entities.
time.
Right, they're two different entities.
Yeah, but they're right now,
In
they're
the same
occupied the
building.
same, yeah.
That I
Yeah.
understand. but-
So, maybe the number's 80%. Maybe 80% of people, and it's a big maybe.
80% of the people who use the warming
Warming
shelter
shelter
use
would
the
be-
resource center?
Right, yeah, and benefit from.
What
So-
counts as using the resource center?
In other words,
More than one service?
So Amanda had numbers about, along the lines of X number of people who were using the warming shelter 2 years ago have now gone on to find jobs or find housing, and the numbers are pretty impressive.
Small. Are you using percentages or numbers?
Let's just say the numbers were impressive, okay? Yeah, the percentages were impressive.
Right.
Now,
Because the numbers were small.
there's always going to be a percentage that just sort of gets left out. And if you talk to the Helping Hands people, when they say, oh, yeah, we provide emergency overnight shelter on short notice for anybody who comes here with a referral. It was the first question I asked this fellow when we were there. We were standing in the lobby. And I said, well, what happens if someone doesn't have a referral? They come knocking on your door, it's a rainy, miserable night, and I heard you got a place to stay. They say you got to get a referral. Well, how do I get a referral? Go to the police station, go down to the police station, and the police station will give you a referral, and then you come back, and then they have a place to stay that night. And what he said was, I don't know if he said they all do it, but most people do that. I find it hard to believe that 100% people would do it. I don't know where they go if they don't get a referral, if they end up in the woods, just like they do here. But it's got to take some people out of
So
that
you
population
think the police
and reduce the number of people that need that warming shelter.
Rick, do you really think that a tweaker shows up with Helping Hands in the night and says, go on down to the police station and get a referral? Now, the police station is going to turn that person right around and go back to Helping
I
Hands?
was dubious myself. Yeah. Now they also go to the hospital, get a referral there. They go to a church and get a referral there. There are systems in place.
But again, if they're they Helping Hands, alcohol-free, drug-free, good behavior, I mean, I find it hard, and I'll make a visit.
I found it hard
to see. I find it real hard to believe that I'm going to house in that environment for, even a night. But
This is probably your last chance to assimilate into society.
It's two different missions though, too.
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking, Helping Hands is looking for people who are willing to do the work. There are a lot of people who will go to a warming shelter for the night,
Right.
but they're not going to do any work.
No.
I mean, they're going to continue on with their life. They're happy with their life just the way it is. Why are we telling them they have to change it? They just want to be covered for the night, and then they're going on their
Some
happy
people-
way. So it's two different
It is, so
people.
back to in your thinking, you've got to think, how much money you're going to put to the categories, and that's what I was trying to list down here. You're already we as a group have said our policy was to partner.
Mm-hmm.
And we've partnered with entities that touch, whether it's hunger or warming shelters or services. So, you can add that up. Are in addition to this, are we talking, or the same amount, when it comes to budget time? Because we could take the numbers, and I think Judy made the point, that'd be a payment on a loan, or buy a building. You can cut out in 2 years' time, there's enough money to buy your corner store.
However, then all these other services are not being used.
Correct.
Then you're cutting everybody else out
Well,
too.
sure.
So you got, because here you've got Business for Excellence in Youth.
But it's about priorities and what's
Food
important.
pantry, you've got, so you take one big pot, or you spread it.
I don't think it's either or, because we're not talking about providing funding for all of the services, because they get funding elsewhere for that. And they were pretty straightforward about that. The building, if you just talk about a building and that's what it would take, that would be different than how we provide funding to these other organizations. So it would be, yes, in addition to.
Well, sell the other lands and then you'll have a pot of money.
Deal.
Renovate the floor in there.
We're talking about, real estate person. We're talking about, I mean, this is something else that we did. We went from $50,000 to $150,000 like that.
Yeah.
No one batted an eye. And so now we're talking.
Oh, no, that's not true.
Hold on. No. I voted no.
I voted no.
But it went right through. Right. And now here we are. I mean, this money thing, and I get what you're saying. We're not a bank, we're not a banker, and all that stuff. But we're in this position to facilitate things that simply need to be done. So we, as the city, are looked at really of what are our priorities. And if the warming shelter doesn't go through, that's $45,000 right there. Do you know what I mean? And it doesn't have to be $45,000. It doesn't have to be $45,000 to Shiloh either. And it could go to whoever applies. And so there's that fluctuation. Just because it has been doesn't mean it's going to continue, period. And just like 6 months ago, we didn't know anything about Helping Hands. Guess what? Now we do. And now we're saying, oh, maybe that is something great. Do you know what I mean? And so, and great thing is we can kind of roll with it and change how that comes through instead of just being so solid in like, oh, here's your next $45,000 check. That just isn't true. That isn't going to be the way that it is. And if there are things that serve our community better, guess what? We're going to go with that, period. Because that's what we're doing here, is we're trying to make it better. And if $45,000 somewhere else is going to be better, well, we'll do that. But we're not stuck in that, period. And we can go above and beyond 150 as well. So
I think we could do it well within the 150.
just saying.
I think we could do what we're thinking about
Well,
within,
and
maybe even less.
yeah, but I'm just saying, it's not concrete. It's not.
Agreed.
So what Friday would you like to visit?
Trying to close the deal.
That came out of my nose.
I'll be there. No, we slipped over the one when Ron was talking about, you encourage the county.
Yeah.
Have you read their goals?
Yeah.
Right. But we gave $25,000 less than the county did last year. They gave $175,000. We gave $150,000. So where are we in that capacity of as far as giving to those outside agencies in that kind of realm?
But as Judy said, they also gave $31,000 towards nonprofits within our cities.
Well, that is
included. That is under their 175.
Yeah.
Right, no,
Right.
I'm just saying.
And then we don't have the number of our in-kind, not in-kind, but in-kind. Sure. We're doing a lot, and we could leverage that against that, saying, hey, look, this is what we're doing. Comparatively to the county, we are doing that. So
I agree.
And we have that $20,000 that they have said.
You know what?
I know it's not a lot of money, but
Listen.
hey, it's towards them.
Let's see
Which
it.
we're still choking on.
Come on.
That no process. This is March.
They're waiting for us.
Oh, Ron, it's on you.
Did you
No,
apply? They said you just had to write a letter, Ron.
Right?
that's it.
I'm sorry, I was looking at other alternatives.
Ron.
All the city has to.
That's what they said.
That's what they
Well,
said.
as of March, that's what they said. As of last week, that's what they said.
We've been hearing that for like a year.
All we have to do is write.
Oh, yeah.
put it
Anyway, so that's 20 more grand.
The point is, and I think your point is, and mine is, leverage these guys.
Right.
Because none of us seem to talk to each other.
Separate
We
entities.
could buy a building together, or something, isn't that, provide overnight shelter?
I asked that.
By the
I
county.
Go down
asked
this.
that, Dick. You know
Say, hey,
what?
look. Yeah, look, we're going to cover 9 of your 15 points right here today, like that. Let's see some.
I'm just
The
saying.
response was, if we help you with the building, then we have to help every city with the building.
Oh,
That was their
That's
response.
exactly what they say here, though.
Yeah.
So,
Where are health services?
so all I want to do is, let's not forget these, because they need to be held accountable. If they're going to do policies and guidelines and 10-year plans, then hold them accountable or get them to back off. And ideally, you'll leverage with us, when it comes to North County.
Or are they, and the other flip side is, are they counting what we as a city do in their stats? I mean, for real,
They are.
are they doing that? Is that something that's really happening?
Yeah. So I think, Ron, we've given you a lot of ground.
But actually, this has been very helpful. From a political science standpoint, this has been very helpful. No, it really has. Allison and I have been jotting notes back and forth with different alternatives and questions. But what we will do is that we will take from this conversation, because I actually did pull a lot out of this and some ideas. The most successful meetings I've been to is where you hear about 60% of what's said, and the other 40% are the ideas that you're writing down. So we have been writing down notes on possibilities that we might be able to look at. So we'll come back with some ideas. Some of it you will, and some of it you won't see in the budget. Okay, budget things have to compete against everything else that's there. But we will work towards we'll work towards something to bring back to you that says, here's some ideas on what we can do.
I just want to, those of you that are on that county housing, or all three of you, where you are, that maybe, and when you're talking with
Wayne?
Wayne, is that maybe just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, just perhaps put the idea out there. We are looking at this to do this thing, and we need support from the county. Sure, the 20,000, that's a given. But what else can you do? Because a lot of the people that we would be serving, if we can move forward with this, would be from the North County area and not just within our
Because let's be honest, the
Because
transients aren't here or there. They're in the
And it's
county.
not just
They're coming. But I mean, the homelessness,
Right.
the whole big thing is, it is back and forth. The whole thing, from here to there, they're
But anyway,
moving.
I'm just saying that I think that there's
Absolutely.
somewhere we can push on that,
Yeah.
not softly, but firmly, but from you, and then we can do our bit too, but we need to start.
And I would encourage you to continue, because I know you have, and if you haven't, please do stop in with Katie Jacobson, who's here every week. And, one, just to get to know her, but she hears you too. I don't care what you say, but it's all education for all of us, because every day she's finding out new things and sharing it. The one thing, and I hate to bring up a whole different subject at quarter after, but somehow for me, childcare fits under housing. And I don't know if we can keep that in mind when we're thinking about housing, or some kind of, whether it's services or permanent. But in this part of the county, childcare is a huge detriment to
I just want to
jobs.
say something on that the kids, Neighbors for Kids, that they wanted, I heard that they wanted to have it was at another meeting, a different meeting, but just about all what people need. And one of them, they were talking about the childcare, and there was someone, I don't know if she was on the board of the Neighbors for Kids, but they would like to do a satellite in Lincoln City. Just saying.
Because we partnered with the hospital, we the city, to generate the early learning center. So it's not outside our realm, and we even have the ordinance where, system relevant charges, we put that in there to begin with, deferred for childcare. So we targeted early.
I'm not sure that I've heard of a
Oh.
real solid proposal on that, but
That's right.
there is this interesting, the state Senate passed bill that would create childcare taxing districts, and it's moved to the House, which I'm going to guess is going to provide prospects of it. Given the makeup of the House, it's likely that they bypass it too. So I don't know what that means for us, and if there's a way to take advantage of that, if that happens. But that's a funding source for childcare, and it absolutely relates directly to affordable housing and all those issues.
Anybody else? Now's your chance to vent before you have dinner. Too late. You all right? Good. Yeah, I think this is great. I love the work session. So, when we get a lot more information, we can, spout off to each other. So it's helpful. Because then, what someone's thinking and what you need to work on to shore up your argument.
Yeah, sure.
With that, call it an evening. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so who would like to go on what Fridays?
You tell me, I'll be there.
Oh, is there a Friday that's good here? What about you, Diane?
Yeah, I'd love to go. It's just going to be really lovely.
We went all over Astoria, but if you could
Should have said that
Three of us will be out of town.
Yeah, really, well, yeah.
Seaside has
Right, I'm going with Dick.
Tillamook.
I'm going with you.
Oh, yeah. Well, Tillamook's just closer. We saw the Astoria facility. It was just really
Somebody, wait, look at your Fridays.
How long then?
Hey, Sheila.
How long have you been?
March 29th,
How about April
What's
12th?
your name? You live in an hour.
we're at a,
Oh,
well,
that's,
you guys can go, but I can't go.
Yeah. Well,
is that the one
I
that's,
wouldn't be interested.
oh, yes. Oh, nice to meet you.
Yeah, because it starts Thursday night.
This guy is a good salesman. And so I'm doing worry that I'm missing doing this. So that's.
I just want to get us, so we know what we're getting into. Because
What about,
that's all I
Whatever you guys decide, I'm cool with.
we're looking at maybe the 29th? Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Well,
Maybe you and Riley could go. Riley's
there's
going
no
to
way
conference on the 12th. Yeah.
So, maybe I can touch base tomorrow before the show fly out of my head and other things.
Yeah, jot them down.
Let's look at that.
So I've been
The
also
29th.
Yeah, and I'll get to Ron and talk to him about it. Ron has, like I said, Ron
we
and
can find.
Diane and Mitch. You want to go?
Oh, yeah, that's when you go in there.
Dick and Riley can go and Mitch. Oh, so you and Riley go with them?
No,
Who goes with us?
well, it's a different regards.
Oh.
Rick,